everybody. We are here today with an actor, vocalist, and good buddy for a long time, BJ Englehardt. How you doing, man?
All right, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good.
So you and I have been friends for a bit since high school, and we lived
I think actually 8th grade.
maybe 8th grade. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's
And,
when you guys moved to the street.
Right, yeah, that street, right? It's like the block in L.A. or something. It's gangster. Yeah, so we lived on the same block, and we had a kind of a couple of us. My brother was included, Dan, and then we have another buddy, Mike Ensminger. We've all kind of been friends for a while and stayed in touch or whatever. That's really cool. Where do you live right now?
I live in Chicago. My wife and I, we have a condo on the north side, 3 blocks from Lake Michigan, and going on 10 years of living in the city.
Mm-hmm. And you've been, for a while, you've worked with the colleges, right, for your job.
Yeah. I have pretty much since I graduated from college, I've had a day job in working for a university. Started at my alma mater, Valparaiso University, for a year, and then the past about 10 years now have been at the Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago.
Cool, man. Yeah, and so you and I had we were obviously friends from being living together and going to high school, but you and I first of all ended up we were at the same church. Both of our families went to Atonement Lutheran, and one thing that I personally thought was really neat is we had a kind of a cool little youth group going on there during high school. So we had a choir, right? And then we also, for me, we had a little mini strings group that had some of us that played for a while, but we had kind of a little youth group going on there. Can you talk about that? Some of your memories from that, or?
Well, I think it's the Cool Cats is what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
The church choir, and we also had the brass group, that Deb Cool, which I played trumpet for. I think I started singing at Atonement in the youth choir 6th grade.
Yeah, wow.
Funny story about that. I was one of those kids who wanted to be cool, wanted to be wanted to play sports. Music seemed a little too nerdy for me, at least in elementary school. And I was in Boy Scouts up until about 6th grade, and I was having trouble with passing the swimming test to be able to go on any of the Boy Scout trips and stuff like that. And I was getting really frustrated about it, and in the process starting to like Boy Scouts a lot less. And so I sort of complained about it to my mom, and she said, well, BJ, you can either stick it out in Boy Scouts and figure it out, or you got to join the youth choir at church. And I was like, I gotta sing? What? And I think my family knew I was a pretty good singer, and I had the genes to be a musician.
Yeah.
Singing in the backseat of the van with my sister, and being able to harmonize really easily and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that not being an issue. So they knew that I had the talent to do it. So I think it was sort of my mom's way of kind of nudging me into music. And so anyway, I went with the church choir in 6th grade, and kind of the rest is history as far as that's concerned. I mean, I guess it was from 6th grade all the way to senior year, 6 years. A great group of people really that we worked with, including my sister.
Yeah, she's a very good singer.
Yeah. Fantastic singer.
And your dad's a pretty good singer too. He's in the regular choir at Atonement for a long time, right? At least 10 years, probably 20 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't even.
Yeah, I wouldn't even want to guess.
Years, but my sister is still singing in a semi-professional group, the William Baker Festival Singers. One of our one of the other cool cats, Michael Carter, that she's singing with as well. But a lot of people that ended up having some sort of musical career. If you think about all the people that were there, everybody I think has kept music in their life in one way or another, and I think that's a testament to the director Jane Andrews, who I think really had a big impact on all of our lives.
So hold on. So, because Martha's directing choir, okay, and then I know Sarah Everson was the choir director at Atonement for a while. Sean's teaching. Sean Murphy's teaching. I'm teaching. I know you've done some acting and singing. Jenny's still singing professionally. Michael still, so there's like a lot of us. Gayla, yeah.
Gayla majored in music in
yeah.
college.
So there's like there's a lot of us that were.
Yeah.
So we had like one thing that I thought was so neat about that is we had a whole bunch of really good girl singers. There's a bunch of them, at least 12 of them that were really, really strong. But I thought what was so cool is we had a section of us guys that were very strong. I mean, we had the 3 Carter boys. You were a good singer. Sean was a good singer. I thought I was a pretty good singer. And we had a really strong like male section too. And that was like a whole bunch of people from like the Olathe, Shawnee Mission, Blue Valley area, right? Wasn't that weird that we had so many kids in that 95 to 01 kind of age range or graduation, wasn't that weird?
I think a lot of churches would kill for, youth singers that were, not only as talented but also just as engaged as they were. I think everybody, really enjoyed their experience and put a lot into it. And, I mean, we got to do some really cool stuff too. We got to go on some really neat trips.
Yeah. What trips did we go on?
Let's see. I know we did one to Chicago. We did a Colorado trip, which I remember that was fun. We stayed in Hotel Colorado, which
I know, that was nuts.
Known as being one of the haunted hotels of the U.S. And so I remember really playing that one up.
I remember you guys trying to get me to open the bathroom door. Do you remember that? We were in the room and we were all freaked out. I mean, we were all messed up, right? So we go up to one of the attendants and we're like, "Is this hotel haunted?" They look at us like, "I don't know." We were like, "Oh yeah, thank you. That's great." Maybe. We were like, "Oh great, thanks, buddy." It was scaring the crap out of us, and then you guys wouldn't open the door, and I'm like, "Come on, there's nothing in this bathroom," so I don't know, that was another silly.
Yeah, it was kind of prank city on that trip.
Yeah.
With the Hotel Colorado.
But what did we get to do with some baseball games?
Oh yeah, we did sing a couple times. We did play, it was the Rockies. I know we sang at the Rockies game. I don't know.
And then the White Sox. Right?
Yeah.
We did 2 national anthems. That's pretty cool, right?
I feel like I missed the Sox game. I think.
Oh.
Because I think high school band. I think that was the year we went to Germany over the summer.
Oh, that's right.
I think a couple of us, like me and Ashley Peterson, and a couple of that were in the South band, had to leave early. So.
Yeah.
Did we ever sing at a Royals game?
What? I don't think so. I don't. I know I didn't, but maybe they did. But we got to sing at a national anthem at a professional baseball game is pretty cool to.
Yeah.
But so I mean, I just thought that was so. It was something that'll probably never happen again at that church. Just that group of with a really good director and that amount of talented high schoolers all in the same time frame, and that was just nuts. How did that happen?
That's too bad, because I mean there's not a lot of other type of outlets where you're going across high schools and school districts and stuff, and people coming together and having that kind of experience. I mean, Atonement it's a big church, and I know they've got a lot of they've always had a pretty large youth population, but to have that mix of musicians, it was kind of a unique time, I think.
Oh yeah, and I remember sitting. Last thing I'll say on that is I remember in rehearsals we were standing next to each other, and I couldn't barely sing because I'm laughing so hard, you know. We're just laughing. I'd mess up, and then you'd start laughing, and then you'd mess up, and I'd start laughing, you know, like
Remember,
it was just like.
Blow, Blow, Bethlehem Wind? I
I
think that was the one that made us all laugh.
Yeah, that's.
Because of the juvenile humor.
Yeah, that's weird. I was definitely Shaq always talks. Shaquille O'Neal always talks about he was a medium juvenile delinquent, medium level. But yeah, that was really neat. And I know so you got to sing in choir in high school, but that was like my only thing to get to sing like that. So that was neat for me to get to actually sing in a choir because I don't always, you know, screwed around at home just singing, you know. But that was really neat to experience that. And to kind of, you know, wait for everybody else to sing something and then pretend you're reading, you know, that kind of stuff. Choir people don't ever do that, do they, BJ?
That never happens.
But so talk about, so that was kind of one like cool outlet that you got. The other one as a youth was you played in band, right? Playing trumpet, and then you also sang in choir at high school as well, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Which did you like better? Which was, or do you not look at it like that?
I don't like to look at it that way, but you know, Shinemission South, our high school, I mean, our band was like a powerhouse in terms of, especially marching band.
Yeah.
I think at one point while I was there, we had the largest marching band in the state of Kansas.
It's like 250 or something. I mean,
yeah.
So with the dancers, it was just monstrous.
It was like
right?
over 300.
Right.
And that's, you know, when you think about our high school being about like 1,800 students or something like that, it was like 1/6 of the high school was involved in marching band. So there was a lot of like tradition behind the marching band that, you know, that was just really powerful. Like you felt like you were a part of something really special. Because it had that tradition, it had the reputation of being like one of the better marching bands in the state, you know, and so, you know, people were really dedicated to it, and knowing that we were going to be able to, you know, be competitive at, you know, the competitions at Central Missouri State in Warrensburg, Missouri, and
I went with you guys one year, I think,
and the University of Kansas always had an event that we went to, and, you know, so we always. So there was a lot of pride in the Rompin' Stompin' Raider band, and so those were some really, you know, special experiences without a doubt because you know, just being a part of a powerhouse is always a cool experience. You know, I definitely learned to be more. I became more passionate about vocal music as I went along, and you know, I think I realized that was. Even more of a strength than playing trumpet as I went along, but you know, it didn't start off that way. You know, and I also have another story about getting involved in high school choir where I was in like a home ec cooking class my freshman year. I didn't even start out in choir because I once again did not want to sing beyond what I had to do as far as singing, which you know, even with the Atonement church choir, I wasn't like ready to be like all gung-ho about singing. And I got to like midterms and I was flunking this cooking class. And I remember because we had done group presentations. My group did a presentation about the walk, WOK.
Yeah.
And we had somebody that was really talkative in our group that like pretty much talked the whole time, and I didn't get a word in edgewise. I ended up getting like a 0 on that presentation because I didn't speak during the presentation.
Don't put it off on them. No, I'm just kidding.
So once again, my mom was like, "All right, I think you need to get out of this cooking class and
that's funny,
go
dude.
sing in choir." And I was like, "Okay, fine."
That's funny.
It was just like fate was intervening.
Right. Yeah. And how many times does that happen to people? You know, where this didn't end up being their path, or this ended up being their path. You know, with music or whatever.
Yeah.
And like you said, I mean, these two different moments that, you know, kind of.
Yeah.
And I think the bigger lesson there is that we don't like to feel this way. I know a lot of people who get like in trouble with the law or something kind of feel this way, where at the time they go like, oh, this is so terrible, but then because of that, this other thing start, you know, they have a better life or whatever because of this like failed moment or whatever. And you just mentioned two of those that are hard to handle and hard to emotionally handle at the time, but then look what happens later about the whole fate idea, you know. I mean, I think that's insane, you know. I mean, just like
you just kind of like stumble into you know, a future passion of yours, you know, through failing at one thing, and that's just how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You know.
Yeah, and you said something interesting that I definitely wanted to talk to you about because I thought it was so neat that a lot of times, I think over the years, we call them like orc dorks, right, and choir geeks, and like these terms that everybody talks about with being in music. But I think you'd probably back me up on this, and you just mentioned this, how like I was thinking about this in high school. I'm like, okay, if we've got 1,800 or 2,000, just to make it even, if we've got 250 in the band, and then 300 total with the dancers, we've got 120 kids in orchestra, you know, because we had a monstrous orchestra program. Then we got another, 60, 80 in choir, right? So now we're up to 5.
At least.
Yeah, and then I don't know about 100 in theater, but at least another 50 in theater because our theater department was not no slouch, you know, either. So we're talking about more than 500 kids in fine. That's more than a quarter of the school. You know, I mean, that's nuts, right? And like, so I thought that was so cool that in our high school, I didn't remember, for me especially, but I don't remember people like getting picked on for being in music at our school.
No,
Did you?
It wasn't that kind of stigma.
It wasn't that kind of stigma.
Because there was enough of a, you know, a large group of people that were able to, you know, stick together and, you know, have a big say in kind of the school in a lot of ways that were in music. I mean, you know, and even a lot of our like people that were like some of our sports stars were also like in marching band as well.
Yep.
You know, I remember, you know, days of football games, you know, seeing the football players who were in marching band wearing their uniforms that day, and like, this is a pretty big number, you know.
Right.
This is not like it wasn't like a separation thing. It wasn't like you got a total. You had like these total, you know, jock cliques and total music cliques. I think South did a really good job of, you know, kind of intermingling, you know, people that had different interests, and I think, and it was a safe place to be able to do that. Which was really great.
And we're talking about Shawnee Mission South, by the way. We didn't really say that, but that's a high school we went to. And then the other thing is that, like, talking about like the dynamics of our school, I remember our baseball team being pretty strong. You know, we didn't really go to state every year or anything like that, but we were pretty strong. And I mean, name another sport that we were really strong. Yeah, I mean, we were pretty middle of the road, I think, with most of our, especially football and basketball. We were pretty middle of the road, but band, biggest in the state. Orchestra, you know, 14 years of ones at contest. Theater department, pretty darn strong. You know, our fine arts were really, really strong, and our sports were kind of weird. That's just weird, you know. Usually, you know, different schools are different, I guess. But But it was like cool to be in orchestra. You know, it was cool to be in band. I mean, that was just really, really neat that our school was like that, because we really had like almost a pull, you know, on it. And so I don't know, like I always thought that was really cool. So next thing is that I mentioned our theater department a little bit. You did some shows in high school.
Yeah.
Specifically, name a couple of the shows that you got to do.
Well, the first show I did was my junior year. It was Evita.
Mm-hmm.
And
I was in the pit for that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I played a bunch of small characters. I was in the ensemble. I mean, it was my first show. One of my choir friends had talked me into auditioning for Evita, and it went really well. I was the understudy for Perone, which was Evita's husband, and then, as I said, I got a couple little solo parts throughout, but theater had also been something that I was kind of reluctant to get into as well.
Yeah.
I think it's a very vulnerable experience, and I think it's a really good thing for everybody to have some sort of experience with theater because of kind of the way it makes you feel vulnerable, how you put yourself out there, you become a character, but you have to, find expression through very authentic emotions and give it a try. And I think there's also a stigma of it, not, once again, maybe somewhat being nerdy as well, but also musical theater not having, maybe being a little more effeminate or whatever you had. And so, when you're in early high school and you want to be you want to be a baseball player and stuff, it's like, to do something where you're singing and dancing in front of audiences, it's a little bit like, I don't.
This is completely lame.
Think I could do that.
Yeah.
But I'm really thankful that my friend had talked me into doing that musical. It was a great experience. And then the second musical I did was Grease, which was spring of my junior year, and I had actually been playing baseball my freshman and sophomore year, and I gave up baseball to be in Grease, to be in Kinnicky, which was an incredibly fun role to play. I would definitely say that my favorite characters throughout my theater experience have been the villains, because, the best thing about theater is to play people that are completely different than you are, and so I know Kinnicky's not exactly a villain, but he's a tough guy,
right,
which is not my.
He's not the protagonist for sure. He's
not
this other, yeah.
He's not exactly comic relief, but he does play. It's not an antagonist.
He's different in that play. He's not the villain, but he's this kind of other character. And so, talk about that you just said something interesting that you, because I think that's something that everybody notices when you watch somebody on the TV when you're acting, and they have this awesome character. The character is not anything that you can make. It's a character that there isn't a person who's like this. And then you go interview somebody, and you're like, oh, that person's dumb, because you've noticed that on NCIS or Lord of the Rings or any movie, and you'll see their character. But then you go interview them outside, and the best example of this is Gene Simmons from Kiss, right? You see him on stage, and he's this persona, and then you go meet him outside, and you're like, oh, that guy, And I thought that was interesting that that's actually him.
Yeah.
And then you were talking about how it's more fun to play people that aren't your personality. Talk more about that. Why is that fun, or why do you like that?
Yeah, I think. Because I would say that I'm somebody that it would be really hard for me in real life to be like a jerk.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
it's really hard for me.
That's not in your character, your normal character.
It's not in my character to get in arguments with people or yell at people or getting into fights or anything like that. And I feel like theater is a really awesome space to be able to to experience something like that's completely different than who I am. The next show that I did in high school was Damn Yankees, where I played the protagonist, the good guy, Joe, and I had to be just like a nice guy, and it felt like it was really hard for me to get into that character because I didn't have to do much to get there.
That's weird. Yeah.
I had to work to get to the point of being like the hard ass Kinnicky.
Yeah. Wow.
There was a place. There was a place in the distance that I had to get to. Whereas to be like Joe, this nice
regular nice guy,
nice Midwestern guy.
Yeah.
It's Okay.
That's
well,
weird. That's interesting that you said the person that was most like yourself was actually harder to
Very
deal
much
with.
so.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Because I don't feel like because then to a certain extent I don't feel like I'm acting. You know,
Hmm.
I don't feel like I'm actually doing anything.
Right. That's interesting. See, I think a lot of people that aren't actors would think that's opposite of what they would think.
Yeah.
You know, they would think that you would want to do, you would want to put, you would want to put The Rock in action movies protagonist so he doesn't have to do anything. You know, he can just be himself, and that's just weird that you said that.
Yeah.
You said something else really interesting about being like vulnerable out there, which I think is really interesting. That's pretty much, I would guess that that's probably the number one reason why people wouldn't want to act.
Oh yeah.
Right, is because you have to like emotionally handle that idea of being vulnerable. I mean, what makes you want to do that? What makes somebody, like, what skills do they need to have to be willing to do that on stage?
You know, I think that to be a successful actor, you have to get to a point where you're not even self-conscious about being up there on stage,
Yeah.
or self-conscious about how you're being and how people are perceiving you.
Yeah.
Like, acting is about truly giving yourself up to an idea or emotion, and living it as truthfully as you possibly can.
Mm.
You need to be a person that that can get in touch with an emotional level. And there's different techniques of how people can get there. There's techniques that are built around the idea of remembering, say if you're trying to get to a sad, depressed emotion, like thinking about something from your life experience.
Sure.
that brings about those emotions for you. There's method acting where while you're preparing for a show, if you're say playing a homeless person, you actually
Go be homeless, sort of.
homeless
Yeah,
or something.
yeah, right.
I mean, certainly for a high paying gig, I can
Yeah.
see that being worthwhile.
Yeah, you could go crazy on that.
You could go
Yeah.
really crazy, and and then there's a method that I took a few classes in called Meisner, which is about doing a lot of one-on-one work with somebody, and it's a lot about letting go of kind of your self-consciousness, and just trying to connect emotionally with person in the most basic way possible. So it's sort of like I start talking about what I'm seeing from you, like you seem perplexed, and then you would repeat back to me, I seem perplexed, you seem perplexed, and you just kind of like organically do this, like where you're trying to get in touch with what the other what you're seeing in the other person, and they're like pushing it back on you, and you kind of have this like back and forth, so that it almost becomes kind of like this kind of like this Zen kind of experience of like just kind of going into this like hypnotic state of like trying to connect with another person emotionally, and it's
Yeah, that's interesting. That's totally different from the other ones, sort of.
yeah, exactly. So
because that one you're letting somebody else kind of help you with that process. I think the diving in yourself, that's all you, right? Or definitely the finding the emotion from your past is again all you, but now you're like really using another person to like get into your character. It's like a teamwork kind of thing. That would be totally different, I would think.
And in most shows you're trying to emotionally connect off of another person, I mean, unless you're doing like a monologue, you are you are having, if somebody's in a show is making me angry, I have to find a way for you to help make me angry.
Yeah.
Like I have to actually try and feel that from the cues that you're giving me.
Yeah, wow.
And so yeah, I think that's really hard for people. I think I think you know um, emotional vulnerability is a challenge for a lot of people.
Mm.
And I can't say that it's still not a challenge for me in some ways, but in real life. But theater helps you to say, oh, it's okay to feel these things in some ways. It's okay for me to feel angry. It's okay for me to feel sad and talk about it. And so it's been cathartic at different points in my life where, the challenges of growing up in high school and the chaoticness of college and the chaoticness of your first years out of college and being in the real world. To have theater was always a nice thing because it was a healthy outlet for emotions that I might be feeling in my daily life.
Yeah, I know. I was watching an interview with Brad Sherwood and Colin Mockery from the improv guys, and they were talking about something that was really interesting about, because they said a lot of comedians use the comedy as their armor for all the emotion, and that's how they don't feel any of the emotion. And they were talking about how they almost feel jealous of the other guys that can wear it on their sleeve so hard, like in the people that are dramatic actors that can wear that on their sleeve so hard on stage. And they said that they would be terrible at that because they built up this idea that they can just say jokes and now I don't have to feel the pain. But you're talking about actually using the pain and trying to like not to brush it off all the time, but kind of really use it. And I know I try to think about this when I'm playing music, when it's like, I don't feel sad right now, but I'm playing Schindler's List right now, so you've got to like kind of like, I feel like you've kind of got to like make yourself feel sad in some way, and it's a kind of an obvious thing to say, but that's kind of weird for people to kind of make yourself come to the music, not the other way around, sort of like. And like that's just crazy to me that actors, like, because I'm talking about sort of not smiling and sort of playing emotionally. You guys are actors take that to a whole DEFCON 4, you guys take it to a whole nother level that I think would be really hard for people to do.
Even my experience of playing trumpet, it was a different experience. You have, in one instance, I had an instrument to somewhat hide behind it, and once it becomes your voice, it becomes your body. You can't hide behind the instrument, And
my mom talked about that too with singing. She's like, "There's nothing. You got nothing there." It's like it's you. If you mess it, you don't get to hide behind your drum set, or even us with violin and trumpet. You can feel it's very, very comfortable. Like a little freaking blanket or something. Where you can kind of all nervous, but you have this trumpet, and it's okay. I'm holding it together here.
Exactly.
I remember one of my. Because we had already been friends, and then you did Evita, and so I'm sitting in the pit, right? And I'm looking up on stage, and it was the Eva Peron song or whatever, and so you're standing there, and you're like one of the, security guards, and you kept putting it was just funny to watch you act, you're doing all the motions and stuff, and then what was the where you guys are all in your English outfits or whatever, you and Kevin Stock or whatever that guy's name was.
Was it like soldier wear?
No, it was the other one. You guys were all in proper dress and forced us to be blunt or whatever. You remember that?
Or something like that?
Yeah, you guys were. It was 8 of you guys all standing there doing that real proper like English. That was another funny moment, just watching you guys, because you were.
I think I played like an old guy with a beard.
You're right. And then you did the marching one, right, with all all the soldiers, right? Yeah. But that was just fun. It was just fun watching you act, because I'd never seen you act before.
Yeah, and it was, it's, shows like that are fun, and it's less about what we were just talking about of like, emotionally connecting with a part, and more about just kind of like being able to do like 5 different people in one show, and just kind of almost being able to let loose with it, which is a different experience. Because you're not going to create an entire backstory for like the banker that you play for like
a minute,
a minute
4
or
lines,
something like that, but you're still gonna have fun with it,
Right.
So like, all right, I'm gonna be this proper English gentleman,
right. And then now I'm a bodyguard,
now
right?
I'm
And
now I'm just
it's-
like this like old scraggly guy, and like have to pretend to like walk with a hunchback, basically.
that's silly. So real fast to finish up with that, what is it, since you've been a person who's done like lead roles, and then you've done like there's these moments where you're in a play and you're 5 different people, and then now you're in the choir, and then you're back doing now I'm the hobo again, and then now I'm back out being a soldier, like what's the difference in those shows of the challenges or whatever? I guess you've already kind of talked about that a little
I mean,
bit.
it's more challenging to stay connected to the show when you are kind of the ensemble, and you're playing the 5 different roles. Just because you don't have to emotionally dive in as much when you play like the one role, the lead or the supporting actor. You kind of have to stay with it as much as possible, kind of throughout the show, to stay emotionally engaged, and so when you go backstage, instead of when you're the ensemble, you can kind of just talk it up with the rest of the cast, and and even some people can play a lead and go backstage and just talk it up with other people and have a good time in the green room and stuff like that. But
detach a little bit and then come right back.
But I think for me, it was always like, all right, I gotta stay as much as possible in like focused on the show. When I'm backstage and I'm not on the stage, and stay connected to it, or else I'm gonna kind of lose the thread in some ways. And so it is. So it is a big difference in terms of your connection to the show and staying connected, and I think you're more bound to forget to do something if you're in the ensemble in some ways, and just because you're so like
scattered,
and you're so scared to do that when you're the lead, because
there's way more pressure.
Way more pressure.
That's cool, man. So last couple things here that I wanted to talk to you about a little bit was you've gotten, so you went through and you had your kind of kid time, where you're doing your choirs and your bands and the plays and stuff, but since you've been out of college, it sounds like you have done some kind of professional stuff, or at least tried to go for that at one point. Can you talk a little bit about
I graduated from college. I'm from a pretty practical family, so I was thinking practically at first when I graduated. I got a degree in history and secondary education. I was like, all right, I'm going to go out and be a history, social studies teacher, and that'll be good for me. And kind of got out and was my first job was like a long-term sub teacher, and realized that at least for the time being, I didn't want to be like a full-time teacher. It just didn't feel right for me. And so one thing led to another. I spent a year as an admission counselor at my alma mater, Valparaiso University, which was kind of in a small town area outside of Chicago. Stayed there in part. I had a serious girlfriend at the time, and wanted to stay close because she was finishing up college, and once we broke up, sort of the dam opened up as far as kind of what my opportunities were, and I think I became less inhibited from, you know, thinking completely practically, you know, and so I moved to Chicago and did get a full-time job, but I, you know, started thinking pretty early on that I wanted to kind of get into the audition scene. You know, Chicago's not as big as like a New York or an LA, but you know, it's still got a pretty vibrant, robust theater and music scene. You know, a lot of people that are, you know, do in it for the love of the arts as opposed to necessarily trying to create the next big thing. You know, and so it was, you know, so I started auditioning and, you know, got out and, you know, was cast in my first 2 shows that I auditioned for, and you know, was getting a lot of really positive feedback from people saying, hey, you should give this a go, and you know, so you know, I wasn't a huge fan of my job at the time, and so, you know, I was getting really sick of it, and so you know, I was in a time of my life where I didn't feel very inhibited to say, hey, let's just go for it, you know. And so I had, you know, 2009, I quit my full-time job and I just say, hey, let's give this a go. I auditioned for one of the top agents in the city and got hired by that agent to be kind of one of their talent people, and that was really exciting for me. And you know, soon after I quit that job, I got a call back to New York City for a national tour of Beauty and the Beast, which was a really neat experience and certainly boosted my confidence about theater and stuff. And yeah, so I had a lot of really great things that kind of were in place, but yeah, it became pretty clear to me that the kind of the world of constant auditioning was going to wear down on me. You know, it's like doing another job interview like every week. You know, like it's like, all right, I've got to impress somebody on like a weekly basis.
Right.
And I gotta, when I'm not impressing them in an audition, I need to find other ways to impress them outside of the audition.
So why was that gonna be a problem?
It was just it was draining.
Yeah. And what was draining about it? Like the amount of time that it took, or?
Well, I think it's I mean, I think a big part of it is the rejection.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of trying to get at, you know, of the
No,
constant,
it's tough.
Yeah.
It's you know, you audition for 10 things, you feel lucky to get one of them, you know, and you know, a lot of the time you're just trying to get to the next gig. You know, you're trying to get the next opportunity, whether that's a commercial or, you know, a musical, anything else. It's you're kind of like you're fighting for the next thing, and you know, I know that even for me, you know, I was in a situation where I had some natural advantages. You know, like you know, I always hear it from women in theater how unbelievably competitive it is, you know, because there's so many women in musical theater that, you know, look somewhat similar and have similar quality of voices, and you know, and that's a real challenge. Now, a tall heterosexual guy,
right?
There's not a ton of us in musical theater. I mean, you know, in dramas and stuff. In dramas and stuff, you're gonna see more.
Sure.
You know, but in and certainly in commercial work, you're gonna see more. But you know, you don't see it as much in musical theater. So I had some real advantages, and it was still really it still made for a difficult experience. And the other thing is you know, certainly in theater, until you get to kind of the high ranks, the money is just not really there.
Yeah.
I mean, you do a show where it's a 6-week run, preceded by 6 weeks of rehearsal, and you're lucky to get like a $300 stipend for that time,
Yeah,
And
I mean,
that's-
which is like, I mean, that's beyond ridiculous for that amount of time, right? I mean,
Yeah, you're it's basically just like paying for your transportation to and from the rehearsals and shows and stuff. So
yeah,
so it became a labor of love, and it seemed really distant, the idea of it being something that was going to be compensation I could rely on, or even compensation that would even supplement any sort of income I was going to bring in. So and that was a challenge. I think the idea of not having the money to go out on a date or something, if you wanted to, not having the money to go out with friends, feeling like you can't spend money on a drink when you go out or something like that. Just feeling like, and I think part of it is me being kind of more kind of conservative with money, and being allergic to debt and all this stuff, just in general. Like it didn't really match that whole like artist auditioning lifestyle was just not.
you want a little bit more security.
I wanted more security.
I
wanted more security. I wanted to feel like I could, be able to, buy a condo in the city, or feel like I could, put money away for retirement, that sort of thing. It was just sort of.
You mentioned something that I always think is fascinating, because I've noticed this a lot, and I'm sure auditioning for plays and stuff is exactly the same as me being a band leader and going out to these club owners. And you mentioned the vulnerable word earlier, and that's what I think, that word comes to mind when you're sitting here like putting yourself out there every single audition, and then you may not get it. And you mentioned that percentage that you're talking about, and I know guys have talked to me about like sales in general, and they were talking about, if you're getting, like when they're selling stuff, if you're getting less than a third of the people are taking your product, that means that you're too expensive. And if you get more than a third of the people, that means you're too cheap or whatever, so that, and you mentioned that idea of doing 10 auditions and then you get like one gig, and I know there's a lot of people in the world, and I won't mention their names, but there's some people in my family that have told me about that. They're like, yeah, I couldn't do that. Putting yourself out there and getting the rejection. Oh, we'll take it. Rejection. Like that's just, I think that's something that actors and musicians don't get enough credit for. That some people are not, the only word I can think of is courage. The other people don't have courage to do that, but they think they're awesome, but actors are willing to put themselves out there. I mean, what do you think that's worth a lot, right? I mean, in life.
Yeah. I think actors have to deal with more like chaos and uncertainty too, musicians, any sort of performing artist has to have a comfort level with that, with the uncertainty of what's going to be next, and and also just kind of that ability to put themselves out there. I feel like the actors that I've come across, that I've worked with, that have ended up having careers that have kind of been somewhat sustainable. A lot of times there are people that they were really able to embrace the chaos, and they were okay with the lack of stability, and it's interesting to see, like and it's interesting, like and seeing people who pretty much have it made, but then they kind of leave the industry, or at least like me would maybe do as I do today, some community theater. I sing at a church, that sort of thing, and sort of kind of on the side,
some sort of outlet,
but people who have it made, and they're usually people that have really really tied to their family, really kind of want to have that, more comfortable, stable life, that, even people that have made it that I've seen, who still struggle with that kind of chaos of the performance. And there's a book called Audition by Michael Churtliff. It's a really famous book about auditioning for shows for actors. And there's a Q&A section of the book, and one of the questions he asks is, how should you know you should be an actor? And he says, if you can be reasonably happy doing anything else in the world, you should do it.
That's awesome. That's an awesome quote.
He says, like, acting is you need to be in a position where you can't see yourself being happy doing anything else. To do it, because it's it is a labor of love, and it's an uphill battle at all times, and so.
And your passion gets you through, or sometimes can get you through that, if That's an awesome quote, man. I really, really like that, because I know the musician world is very similar. I think there's more work in general for musicians. I mean, you can go get in a band and play at a stupid coffee house or restaurant, but in acting, I mean, it's you find a good show and it's $400 for 6 weeks of work. I mean, that's nuts. We get $400 for like 4 gigs.
Yeah.
Like 4 nights total over like 4 weeks or something. So the money is just like 1,000, and we have to do like a half a night. Like one night of work, and then we've got another 150 hours left in our week, but we didn't really have to waste any time. That we still got 150 hours left in our week. I mean, that's like, I mean, it's not like it's good money, but it's better. Better, But so I guess last 2 things here. Did you? Because I know your wife is also an actor, and have you heard any interesting like tidbits about her? Because she's from Britain, and have you heard any any stories she's told about like acting over in Britain, or anything that she's said about how they run plays over there, or like compare what she's talked about with like comparing British actors to American actors? I mean, you can answer this any way you want, I guess, but have you heard any interesting new things from her, because just coming from another country, or?
Well, so, I mean, the thing about my wife is that she did her senior year of high school in the U.S., and then she did college in the U.S., and so she spent most of her adult life in the U.S. She was over in the U.K. for 3 years while we were dating, but she didn't do much acting while she was over there, just because she was trying to save up money to be able to come visit me. And, she
I'd forgotten about that.
She kind of chose the more stability route, in that process. But there was a time when she first got over there where she was like, up until the point she met me, which was basically like 2 months until she had to move back, she was starting to think that she was gonna go to conservatory over there, and I think that they're
over in Britain. Yeah.
She was here in the U.S. Her visa was ending, and then she was going to go back, and she was trying to figure out what the next step was when she got back. And I think the interesting difference between kind of the U.S. and the kind of British acting scene is that the U.S., at least to a certain extent, I think has maintained a level of meritocracy, as opposed to pedigree. Meaning like somebody an actor in the U.S. Generally doesn't need to have gone to one of the top art schools to like get a foot in the door. People. Yes, those people probably have an advantage in terms of knowing the right people and getting the auditions early on, but I think you're more likely in the U.S. if you go and see a Broadway show and see an American, you're more likely to see a school that maybe you've never heard of in the U.S. it's like a small time school, than say in the UK, where I think the you know, the kind of the general feeling is that you have to go to one of like the top conservatories to even get a foot in the door.
To even think about it.
And I do remember when she first moved back, she was looking at auditions, and you know, it seemed like there was some real barriers in the way. You know, you had to pay to be able to even see auditions, and I think that there was, you know, I think that there was some, you know, unspoken things about only seeing people that went to certain conservatories in the audition. And
that's rough.
And I don't think that happens as much in the U.S. You know, I mean, I know that she currently has a friend that just from her college, she went to a really small liberal arts school in Illinois, 450 students, small theater program, and one of her friends from theater just understudied on Broadway. You know, and so I think the U.S. theater scene has done a better job of making sure to see people
who have talent.
Based off of that, like that's kind of what you get. And
that's cool.
I think that kind of goes along with just general U.S. versus British stereotypes. Like, you know, there's this like, you know, long history of the aristocracy in Britain, and there being like real stark class differences, whereas the U.S. has been less about class differences to a certain extent.
Than that,
You
that's interesting, man. All right, last one I got for you. I have always been fascinated by getting people to talk about things that people don't usually get to see. So, for instance, when people are doing shows, they have a general idea of what's happening on the stage, and then even musicians like myself are sometimes backstage at a show before the show, and it's hilarious to me. I mean, I'm looking around and people are like running around with their heads cut off, you know. I mean, they're looking for costumes, they're like trying to rememorize lines, there's just like chaos rolling back there. And I've heard of some hilarious stories of stuff that happens like during the show backstage. You know, stuff like that always fascinates me, or the different kind of behind the scenes kind of things that happen. You were talking to me about a New Year's gig or something that you were talking about.
Yeah. Well, and I think this kind of goes to the whole difference between being a bit part, like ensemble member, versus having like one of the leads. Because you know, I always was just so laser focused whenever I was in sort of a lead role during the shows that, you know, I was just so focused on not like missing an entrance or something that kind of the behind the scenes was, at least from my standpoint, wasn't terribly exciting. But but yeah, when you're kind of more in the ensemble role, like you know you're able to kind of let loose backstage and get a little goofy because you're not as like engaged. And so yeah, there was this one show I did over the Christmas season, and you know, I think a lot of the people were not terribly excited about doing a show on New Year's Eve, and you know, me and one of my fellow ensemble members, we were, I can't remember how we got it, but she brought in a flask of some booze, and you know, we were kind of in between scenes, you know, basically taking shots in the green room, and
a big F you to
sort of like, whatever, New Year's Eve, you know, like, I don't remember us like having a bad show, and you know, to be honest with you, like sometimes having a little bit of inebriation like allows you to just kind of go out there and you know, let loose a little bit more, which can actually be a good thing in theater,
right?
You know, so you know, so there was some experiences like that. You know, it's always interesting to see kind of the comfort level that people end up getting, you know, because you're in like a dressing room that's like, you know, it's oftentimes you're sharing it with, you know, males and females.
Right. Yeah.
So clothes is like flying off. And, you know, there's just this lack of inhibition.
That's really a culture thing, isn't it? I mean, that is not a culture thing in orchestra, right? I mean, there's really a culture thing in theater of the because I just did what was it? It was Moulin Rouge. So I was in the pit for Moulin Rouge, and I had been around like blues guys, playing blues shows and like jazz guys and stuff, and everybody's so like, I'm too cool for this room. They've got this certain like attitude, and they're fun and stuff. But then I went over to the theater guys again, and they're all like, they don't give a crap. Like, they don't give a crap about like what you think about them. They're gonna be themselves, and that's so cool. And that kind of goes with what you said of everybody's so whatever about like their personalities, and they're all lovey-dovey, and there's hugs every 5 seconds, and like it's like that was just there is definitely a fun atmosphere of being around theater people for like 6 weeks. It's pretty awesome. Like some people can't handle it, but
well, you get incredibly close with people, and it's both like a really great thing, and both can be a challenge, because after the show's over with, a lot of people move on to the next show, and then they're going to be like best friends with like
another person
in the next show, and you like lose that relationship that for some people that can be, I think for me as a challenge is being somebody who kind of prefers to have like a smaller group of really close friends. When you feel like you've connected with somebody, and then you lose track of them because they've done 2 shows since you did a show together, and they become best friends with other people in another show. It's like you almost feel betrayed, but it's I don't think that's necessarily fair, but I think it's just sort of like it's just sort of the culture of how things go.
I know this Moulin Rouge was, and this is another thing that we didn't really talk about, but there's a whole bunch of levels of the theater, right? I mean, you have the like in our town, like Starlight or something would be the example of like a pretty big time theater where you have 3,000 people in the audience, or 6,000, and you're getting paid, and it's But then there's the one that I went to where this room is like, 100 by 40. This is a pretty small room. The stage is like 10 by 10 or something, right? And it's small cast, and they've kind of made a little theater company there, sort of, and they have this big, I'm sure, list of 200, theater guys from around town, and they call people up of who they want and what show, and they have this big community that they've made, and so they would not have your problem of they're doing, I don't know how many they do a year. I'm sure they do at least 12 a year. I'm sure, they do at least 1 show a month. And so you'd see people, you might do 4 shows with them a year, so you'd probably be seeing the same, a bunch of your friends, and you'd be doing multiple shows with them a year. So
it depends on the situation. If you're involved in like with a specific theater company, I think certainly in Chicago you have, I don't even know the number of theater companies that are there, but you're usually auditioning for different theater companies, and ending up with shows with different people, and because you're trying to get exposure in front of a lot of different people in the industry. And having like a diverse resume of working for a lot of different theater companies is going to get you, that audition or that attention when you do like a audition for like a Broadway show or something like that.
That many more eyes,
because it just shows that you've worked with a real variety. You've worked in a variety show. It shows you have, dexterity and versatility and stuff like that. But I think there's a lot of people that get really comfortable working with one theater company, and it helps them to kind of stay grounded, with that group of people,
It probably makes them really easy to work with too. There's probably benefits and deficits of that, because if you get the same 3 directors that are with this company, or 1 director, they know what you do, and you know what they're gonna do, and that can be great too. I'm sure. Yeah, that's cool, man. What else you got? Anything? Kind of hit a lot of stuff there, but
I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Well, that's really neat that I know I've been talking to a lot of not serious professionals, but people that are like doing gigging like constantly, and teachers, that are teaching all year round and stuff. And it's really neat to hear somebody who came from the same kind of general high school experience that a lot of us did, but then ended up going a little bit different way, where it's now more of a love than a 100%, 100% money career decision
Yeah.
like it is for me. And so it's interesting for me to talk with people like yourself that are still very much fans and very much doing it on a kind of part-time kind of level, whatever you want to call that. But that's really neat for us to hear from people like yourself, because we can kind of think that we know all and be all, when like a band that is gigging 6 gigs a month, and they're doing it pretty hard, but then they don't ever listen to like fans, and ask them what they think, or different people that aren't biased by just being deep in it. It's interesting to hear from people like yourself. So this is BJ Englehardt. You can check him out on all sorts of stuff in Chicago, and we will be back with whoever the heck is on next on Casey Music Talk. I have no idea who's on next. It's gonna be some more dudes like this. So you guys take it easy.